We're back with Broken News. Paul Fontaine is joining me. We're just going to talk about one specific topic, which it relates to WWE releases, but we're going to pick which three people, if we were in Tony Khan's chair, which three people that we would invest in to bring over from the WWE releases. Now, I don't know I don't know if Tony's even going to take one. Like, there's a possibility he takes none. He could take more than three. I just thought three was a nice little number for us to use and discuss. So, Paul, why don't you kick it off? Who would be number one on your list if you were Tony Khan to take advantage of and bring over to your company?
My number one would be somebody that she's old or older. She's the oldest name on this list, actually, but I think has the most to offer, and that would be Shayna Baszler, for a lot of reasons. Like, number one, she's arguably the most talented in-ring competitor of everybody on the list. She's obviously great experience, got the MMA background, legit MMA pioneer, and and a good company person from everything that you've ever heard. You've never heard anybody say anything negative about her. And I think working with the younger women that they have in AEW would help those women out a lot. And it would also have the side benefit of potentially, maybe convincing Ronda Rousey to come in. And then you would have at least three of the four horsewomen. And I'm sure, probably would take, a McDonald's gift card or something to get Jessamine Duke over.
What has Jessamine Duke been doing?
Nothing, as far as I know. Like, she's not in MMA or anything. I haven't heard her name since she got released. So, I'm sure it wouldn't be too difficult to get her. But I mean, I don't even know if they'd need her. Like, you could do just the three. You could even add someone else and just call them the four horsewomen, But and again, like, you could even just stick her right in the Death Riders if you wanted to, and have her and Marina, just tear ass in the women's division.
She would also be my number one.
Okay.
And one, I think she's an asset to any company because she is not. Now, who knows if AEW could even take advantage of this, right? But she is not pro wrestling in the way that people think of pro wrestling. She is pro wrestling in the way of how maybe people used to think about pro wrestling, which is real fighter, someone who knows how to defend themselves, how to protect themselves, like that kind of mentality. We don't have that in AEW that much. But who are some of the who are two current stars right now who have that aura to them? Bobby Lashley and Shelton Benjamin. Now, it's not only that aura. There's also the way that they dress and the way that they present themselves. But push comes to shove, that is also who they are. Those are reil dudes. So
Marina's another one too.
Marina, except people don't know that because they don't talk about it.
Well, Mox has brought it up.
So yeah, but her character currently is like the silent assassin. Like that's who she is. She's not like a former judoku who was really good in that realm and then tried to go into MMA and just didn't have a great chin, and so that didn't work out for her. But the reason why I think your premise, which is it's not really about Shayna, it's about what Shayna could bring in, because you already have Marina. They're friends. And then out there somewhere is the specter of Ronda Rousey. And Ronda Rousey, there's going to be a lot of the AEW fan base who just disagrees with the idea of bringing Ronda in because they think that she's, not agreeable, or she holds herself on a pedestal, or maybe some idiot comment she made, from years ago, whatever that thing is. If you bring in Ronda Rousey, think of the PR that comes with that. Think of the communication that comes with that. There's going to be folks who loved her in WWE who's like, oh, Ronda's there. I need to sort of see what they're doing with her. So the specter of Ronda Rousey is all that I need for Shayna. Now, we don't know. Ronda recently had another kid. She's very, I'm sure she's fine. She doesn't need the money. Her and her husband seem to be doing very well. They seem to be living their best life. Would she come back for a full-time run? Probably not, but that's probably also the best way to utilize her, is not on a full-time run. You bring her in for a big show. She's there when you need her. She's the face. She does a podcast with Renee, and it kind of explains some scenarios. Like, there is superstardom in Ronda Rousey that WWE did not take advantage of the last time she was there, but also that, Tony Khan was able to work CM Punk magic. Now it's a different kind of magic with Ronda Rousey. We've seen Ronda in the last 2 or 3 years, but big star. How do you utilize her? I could think of like 20 ideas right now if Ronda Rousey came to AEW about how to introduce her, what to do with her. Think of like John Moxley's current Death Riders. Like, if you asked John Moxley a year ago when they came up with this idea, who would be the perfect badass assassin? He would say, "Oh, it would be Ronda. If we could get Ronda, she would be the right person to be right beside me." It's almost like Marina is a stand-in in a sense for Ronda, because if Ronda was there, Mox wouldn't have to say any of those things that he says about Marina, because the people would know.
Right
now.
Yeah.
I know this is about Shayna, and I'll get back to Shayna. You could do this would be kind of fun. Who's the third woman? You have Marina, you bring in Shayna, everybody knows the third woman is Ronda, and you start teasing it, knowing that she's with you. You couldn't tease it if she wasn't involved. And then you just set up this whole thing about when is she going to be here? What AEW used to be really good at, right? When they would bring in people. And this is another layup for me. So Shayna could work with, they had Layla Hirsch doing somewhat of a similar style, but now you have the real thing. Now you have Shayna Baszler, who's the real thing. So I'm 100% with you. I can only imagine, knowing how John Moxley's brain works, this is his dream scenario for whatever the Death Riders could have been. And maybe when the Death Riders finally dies, maybe this is the way to get them kind of back, is to bring in the three women on the side. So I just think there's so many cool ideas.
You could also, I was gonna say, you could also throw a curveball and like bring in Shayna, and everyone thinks, oh yeah, she's gonna go in the Death Riders, and then put her in the Hurt Business. And then you could have Marina and Shayna working against each other.
And maybe the Hurt Business is the right spot for them. And maybe it's not the Death Rider. Whatever it is, there's opportunities.
Yeah.
And
there's a lot of stuff you could do.
I would challenge the current AEW fan base to think a little bigger when it comes to Shayna and Ronda, because they would look at them and go, "Oh, failed WWE. We don't want to have anything to do with failed WWE." But no, what you look at is you go, "Okay, why did they fail? Is there meat on the bone?" I would say yes. And would she bring attention? Would some of her former UFC fan base, who has never thought 1 second about AEW, crossover and give AEW a chance? That's the way you have to think when it comes to building new fans.
Yeah. I mean, Shayna Baszler is honestly like probably better known than 80% of the people on the AEW roster, because of the time in WWE, because of the time in MMA. She's also very active on social media, hashtag Queen's Army. And, like that's something that she was heavily involved with before WWE. And even when she was in NXT, not so much now on the main roster, but, like she had that whole thing going. And I imagine she'll bring it back again, no matter what she does, whether she's in AEW or, even does the indies or anything. Like I know, she's done Bloodsport, and I could see her working the indie schedule, maybe going to, I'm sure she would love to do Stardom, so, like there's a lot of stuff she could do.
And she's a super nice human being.
Yes. Well. Oh yeah. 100%.
All right. Let's go with your number two. Who's your number two? Because we both had the same number one.
My number two is Eddie Thorpe, Carl Fredericks. I think that's somebody that was actually starting to catch on in NXT. I was surprised that they let him go. He's a little older than I thought he was, 34. I don't know if that has anything to do with it. The idea is that, if people aren't progressing in 6 months, then they cut them. And I definitely think in the last 6 months, he's progressed like quite a lot. I did see a tweet that he made being critical of President Trump reinstating Columbus Day. I hope that doesn't have anything to do with why he got released, but guys
It
have
wasn't
been.
even a tweet, was it? Wasn't it just like an emoticon of like a
It was
throw
an
up face or
emoticon,
something?
yeah, the throw up, yeah, just puking at the idea of putting over Christopher Columbus, which Eddie Thorpe.
If I would have saw that Donald Trump tweet, I would have done the same thing, but I didn't see it.
But you don't work for WWE. And he's a proud Native American. That's part of his character. Never was before WWE, which is interesting as far as I know. Like I didn't even know he was Native American until he got to NXT. But yeah, he's 34, kind of burned his bridges in New Japan. So that is, obviously AEW works with New Japan, but I mean, he doesn't have to be part of that. I think he would be a very valuable, he's one of probably the best male talent on this list, I would think. And obviously got a lot of experience, a lot of indie experience, and he's worked a lot with a lot of the guys in the AEW roster. So that would be my number 2.
I really like Carl. If you could, if we could go back to, gosh, this would have been, I think it would have been right when John LaRocca stopped doing Premiere and picked back up booking APW. I think that's the right time frame, but Carl Frederick was on one of the shows and I interviewed Carl, and I'd seen a very little of him, but I'd seen enough to where I was like, okay, like, we talk about Kyle Fletcher as like the young Randy Orton. I was like, man, Carl Fredericks, his body and the way he moves, the way he throws his drop kick, he moves like a young Randy Orton. Now you fast forward, he went through New Japan. He had those comments about not being in, was it in the G1 or something is what kind of got him in hot water. And then he got signed by NXT. He no longer moves like a young Randy Orton. I don't know if it's injury. I don't know if it's just athleticism, whatever it is. But the Carl Fredericks I saw in his mid-20s versus the Carl Fredericks I see now is a lot different. However, he does have a lot more experience. And if AEW could tap into that Carl Fredericks that I interviewed way back when he was working in the Bay Area, I think he'd be fantastic. I just don't think I ever saw that, because when you think of like, you and I follow baseball, like when you see someone who's like coming through the ranks, like single A, double A, triple A, and they just continue to improve. And then the next step, which is the hardest one, is you go to the big league roster. Vladdy Guerrero, like the top prospect in all of baseball. And now he's a great baseball player. Bo Bichette, like same thing. And for me, it would be, some of the current guys on
Patrick
the Giants, the young pitchers that they have. So Carl Fredericks kind of got stuck in like between AAA and the big leagues. And so he's in this interesting spot with his career where, we call those guys quadruple A players.
He's Kevin Biggio.
Yeah. What you don't want to become is Crash Davis, right? You don't want to become Crash Davis from Bull Durham. So I mean, I am rooting for that dude. Like John and I actually interviewed him right before he got let go from New Japan. Like,
so this
he came
like
on with us
2019, 2020.
So there was a he was working for the Canvas Theory, not working for them, but he was sponsoring some of their hats. And so I like those guys a lot, and we brought on Carl, and I have some of their hats. Their hats are great. But that was when it was. Yeah, I don't remember exactly the time frame, but it was before he went to NXT, for sure. I want to say it was later, like it was maybe early 2020s. But anyways, nice dude, but he's a confident dude at the same time.
Yeah.
Like, he believes in himself. That's what it's going to take. He was not on my list, but I do like that addition. I'm going to have someone next who's not on your list. And the reason why I think she's not on your list may also be related to sort of age thing. But I really like Dakota Kai. I don't think she's the greatest wrestler in the world, but she has a unique personality and charisma that I think works with the AEW audience. I think the way she uses social media really works with the AEW audience. I think, in a sense, being on WWE kind of probably held her back a little bit in that way. I think she just fits the energy of AEW way better than it fit the energy of a WWE corporate company. And there's other things about her where it might not work, like she's had lots of injuries of late. she's been on WWE TV for a long time. So it's not like she hasn't had exposure. So would that translate? We've seen that translate in some scenarios decently well, but for a short time. Like I'm thinking of Ruby Riott, like for like that short time, it was like, oh, she's so cool. But then you started to see her week after week after week, and she lost a little bit of that coolness. So I think Dakota Kai would be my number 2, but I also understand why there are things working against her.
Yeah, it wasn't really the age. And honestly, like I was surprised that she's as old as she is. She doesn't look that
No,
old.
not at all.
She hasn't been around that long. Like, she did start in the indies, but I mean, I'm looking up her cage match right now, and I guess she started in like 2009, 2008. But I mean, it's only really been the first time I ever saw her was NXT, and that was 2017. So I just assumed she was, probably in her early 20s then, and I would have thought maybe she's 30 now, but she's 36. She's had some injury issues. I think the social media stuff probably is a little bit off my radar, so that may be part of why you're seeing something in her that I don't. In terms of
It's just the way she uses
yeah,
it. She uses it in a
yeah,
very fan-friendly way, and in a very
which
sort of outreach kind of, like how, independent stars need to use their social media. Like she's very good at that style, which doesn't necessarily translate to the way WWE wants you to use social media.
I do think that a lot of the people that are a lot of the women in AEW right now, like, anybody that's older than like 25 has probably worked with her in the past and probably will be pushing for her to come in. And she's obviously well liked in the industry. So, I mean, I could see it. It wouldn't necessarily be one of my choices, but I know that there's a lot of fans of hers. She's one name that I've seen a lot of AEW fans hope would come in. And she was also very vocal against the fact that, like she countered Nick Khan saying they don't bench anyone, and she said, I'm not injured and I'm not being used. So, whatever
She
that
knew.
is.
It sounds like she knew the writing was on the wall.
Well, that's the thing. Like, and I think like Nick Khan is probably right. Like, we don't bench anyone. So if you're not being used right now, chances are you're probably not going to have a job.
Okay, and so
In a
now
week or two.
let's think of this.
Yeah.
Could she have been thinking 2 steps ahead, thinking, I
Mhm.
know I'm getting cut.
Yeah.
What is a way for me to get in the good graces of AEW and Tony Khan and the
Mhm.
fans? How can I look a little rebellious here? No, and I don't think that she was not disrespectful in any
No, no,
way.
no. But this is what you're talking about, like the way she uses social media.
Yeah.
So that would be consistent with her,
There was a
with
savviness there in that
yeah.
tweet, which may some people think she's old. I've already seen, I forgot who said, maybe it was Ibu who was like, yeah, like the way he was talking about her was almost like a done deal already.
I saw something and I didn't delve into it because I was somewhere where I couldn't. But maybe that like she wasn't actually released and that it may be a contract
Oh,
expiration, in which
yeah,
case she could be available like right away.
sure, that would be amazing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I would,
So, and
I would, if you're Tony Khan and you
mhm.
know that she is available and you want to debut her in a Tony Khan style way, maybe we'll see one of those multi women,
Like a casino gauntlet.
yeah, exactly. Because we are coming
Yeah.
up on Double or Nothing.
Yeah, and you get Evie come in, and Excalibur expects it. We all know who she is, the captain of Team Kick.
Okay, so now it's your number 3.
My number 3. Okay, I'm gonna do a wild card here, and I would imagine this is somebody nobody has on their list, but it's somebody that I've had an eye on since she debuted, and that's Jakara Jackson.
I really like her. I think she looks like a
I
star.
Well, that's it. And so to me, this is like the eye test, like the Booker T eye test. I was there. I was at the NXT taping. I've gone to one NXT taping in my life. I brought my daughter, and it was her debut. And she came out, and I had no idea who this woman was. And I was looking at her, and I was like in awe. And I said, if this woman can wrestle even a lick, she's going to be a big star. And I thought, the team with Lash Legend was going pretty well. They were working, they brought them up to the main roster for some matches and they didn't look bad. In fact, some of their matches were really good. They went to TNA, they looked good there. And then last week, just out of the blue, they broke up and it was like, uh-oh, writing's on the wall here. and and Oral Mensa was one of that group, and he was cut as well. So she's 29, which I actually thought maybe she was a little bit younger than that, but that's still like she is one of the younger people on this list. Just an incredibly she's got just an incredible look, and I think like the wrestling is decent. And if I'm Tony Khan, I'm thinking I could probably get her for a decent price. And it's somebody that I could just invest some time and money into, and hope that in 5 years she's a big she's a good wrestler and a big star.
So my list pretty much ended with 2.
Okay.
I think if I had to add a third, I do like Eddie Thorpe, Carl Fredericks a lot. And if you can kind of, I don't, if you can go back to the New Japan version of Carl, maybe that is the way to go. But I decided to use my third as a wild card, and is something that is actually anti AEW, and I'll
Okay, I
explain
know who
it.
you're going. I know who you're
And
going.
it is Braun Strowman.
Yeah.
And but I would not sign him in the way that they're signing a lot of the former WWE folks, which is to these 3 or 5-year contracts or whatever, and debuting them in a big way. I would sign him, and he would have to be okay with this. Like, he may say no, I'm going to hold out, but if I was Tony, would sign him to like whether it's a per match deal or like a year deal, and I would sign him to do a couple of things, mostly 2 things. The first thing, you debut him and you just have him come in and you have him squash, for a month or for 2 months, just in handicap matches, and you're just building this giant guy up. And then I would have him build up to a match with Bobby Lashley. These guys know how to work together. They've worked together many times. And the idea is that this is where you show, okay, Bobby Lashley's the real deal. He goes through Braun Strowman. And then the second big program I would use is that Braun Strowman is on his way out, in a sense, and you use him to get over Will Hobbs. You have Will Hobbs beat him in a big man thing. Now, AEW doesn't do big man wrestling very well. It's almost antagonistic to what they do. They even explained this on Dynamite. They had their announcers, and I don't know if this was a directive or not, but the announcers actively say, oh, wrestling's not a big man sport anymore. So I don't think that this is what they would do. It's just something that I think they could do to utilize the guys that they have and to put over the guys that they have. And then after that 9 months to a year, WWE just probably re-signs him again, just for the mere fact that he was on AEW television. And that's maybe how you sell it to him. It's like, dude, you'll be here for a year. WWE will want you again, and then you go back, and this is just what we do. Now, he's going to have to lose, and he's going to have to agree to lose, but that is kind of the carrot at the end.
And maybe he gets over with their audience, and actually, maybe Tony decides to keep him. Maybe he surprises everybody that their audience actually wants to see that. Like, I don't expect that. I mean, out of all the names on this list, he's by far the biggest name.
Yes.
Like he's a former world champion. He's main evented multiple pay-per-views. He's been on WWE television for 8-9 years. He's got the former, he used to be in the Wyatt family, so he's got that kind of loose connection to Brody Lee. You could have him, have some of a friendship with Brody Lee Jr. or something like that. Like you could do something like that. But yeah, the one thing I'd be worried about, and you made a good point of having to clear all of this ahead of time with him. I feel like he might be like a Miro, where like you get him in there and now he doesn't want to lose.
You get it. You just get it on paper. You go, here's the plan, and maybe for the first 3 months of the contract, you go, dude, we are going to pay you. We want you to heal up. We want you to take a little bit of weight off for your knees, but you're still going to look like a beast, because we don't have anybody who looks like you. Like, you're going to look even bigger on our television. And then here's the layout. Now, this is this is what we have. Are you open to this? Because at the end of this, we think WWE is going to sign you back anyway. So, because he's only 41, which when you say only, It's just have seen him so much. I just assumed he was like in his mid 40s. So he's even younger than I thought.
I actually just came up with an idea of how you could bring him in. He could be eventually MJF is going to split up with the Hurt Business.
Yeah.
He could bring in Braun Strowman as his heavy.
Yeah, that would be
And
good.
That'd be really good. And you have him like just mow through, your Tony Nese and your Blake Christian and Lee Johnson and all those guys, and then eventually goes up to Bobby Lashley, and then that's when they have their meat match. And
what is it? Do we know what his real name is? Because Braun Strowman,
Adam Scherer.
Braun Strowman. At first, it was such a hokey name, but then it became a great name.
Yeah,
Adam Scherer. I don't know if is necessary. Plus, they have so many Adams already.
They'd probably just give him another name that sounds vaguely like Braun Strowman.
Yeah.
But yeah, like now I'm kind of warming up to that. The one name that neither of us mentioned is funny, and it's by far the youngest person on this list is Cora Jade.
Yeah.
And she's actually done indies, and she was in TNA before she got to WWE. She did AEW dark matches and everything. But I just think it feels like somebody nobody wants to touch for whatever reason.
I think she has to do a complete reinvention of herself.
Yeah. Well, I think the problem is she did, and it wasn't to her benefit.
She did the reinvention, what she probably thought that they wanted her to do.
Yeah, and I think she broke up with Braun Breaker, and that probably didn't help.
I didn't even know they were dating.
Oh yeah, they were a thing for like a year or two. It was vaguely referenced on NXT television.
Oh,
probably one of the weeks you didn't watch. But yeah, but I mean, she's only 24. With a lot of experience. So,
well, you say a lot, but they put her on television when she had no right being in a wrestling.
No, but she was in the indies before NXT. Yeah. And she was in AEW. Like, she was on those dark tapings and Elevation. Like, she's got a handful of matches in AEW already. So she was like 19 when she was doing that.
I'm not against that. If you want to invest in somebody young, but I think maybe even to Braun Strowman, she has a WWE stench to her that is not what the AEW fan likes. So she would have to erase that, because for instance, Saraya, she just basically she's like, oh, I'm just Paige, and now in AEW, and the audience just actively disliked it.
She'd almost have to go back. Reinvention. She'd almost have to go back to her original gimmick or name, and it wasn't. Just gonna look it up, but and go on like ROH or something like that, and then just eventually basically almost be like a new character, Elena Black.
Yes.
And then just oh, somebody's gonna be like, oh, wait a minute, is that Cora Jade? It's like, but I mean, you know her more as Elena Black because she's been doing matches, like almost like that, and she's young enough that she could maybe even get away with that. So I wouldn't. She wouldn't be in my top 3.
Gallus is going to get an ROH run, aren't they?
Well, I mean, they'll end up in Progress probably. So, New Japan could pick them up. I mean, they'll be on AEW television at some point.
It just feels like they're just going to be in ROH
those guys
shortly.
Turn the channel.
And those guys are also not as old as I thought they were.
I actually thought, I didn't realize they were like Wolfgang's 38.
They're in their mid to late 30s. It just feels like they've been around forever.
Well, they have. Yeah. I mean, I was watching them in ICW in the mid 2010s. So, that's 10 years ago. I guess they were all pretty young then.
Someone who's not on my list, but I just wanted to say, I hope that they can do whatever it takes to stay in the business, is Gigi Dolan. I thought that she had a great look. I've always thought that she had the great look, but it didn't necessarily correspond with her in-ring presence. And, you can tell that she's also really frustrated. So I hope she channels that frustration and turns it into some sort of, creative thing for her, because she's still 27 and she's young and she's had her ups and downs. She's gone through a lot of BS in her young life already. I can tell just by the mere number of things she's dealt with, she's probably really mentally strong at this point, especially having to deal with this. So come back full strength and show people what you really have. That would be my hope for Gigi Dolan.
Yeah. I kind of met her a little bit on WrestleMania weekend in 2022. And I mean, she was, I guess only 24 then, and she was already part of like a featured act, like, so you kind of figured she was going to be a big star,
Yeah.
at like, in her early 20s, and she's still only 27. So yeah, I mean, yeah, you definitely wouldn't close the book on her for sure.